It is a significant opening.
This could be the offset chamber.
Another anomaly is this one in the northern tip of the swamp.
Could be the Jack Adams box.
The box.
Jack approached your father and said, hey, I've got a metal target.
After more than a decade of digging, drilling, and decoding one of the most mysterious islands on Earth, the breakthrough no one thought possible has finally happened. Marty and Rick Lagina weren't just chasing rumors. They were chasing something bigger, something biblical. Hidden beneath centuries of secrecy, booby traps, and ancient engineering, the trail may have led them straight to one of history's most sacred relics, the Lost Ark. That's right. New evidence uncovered in Season 11 has triggered the most shocking discovery in Oak Island's history. Not gold, not manuscripts, but a sealed chamber, strange energy readings, and a relic unlike anything they've ever seen. This isn't just treasure. This is a revelation. In this video, we break down the biggest clues, the wild theories, and the moment that left even the Lagina brothers speechless. Like and subscribe now. Is the mystery of Oak Island finally solved? Or is this just the beginning of something far greater? Oak Island, July the 17th, 2025. The air was thick with anticipation as the crew gathered around Shaft 9, their machines humming softly in the early morning haze. Years of searching, digging, and decoding had led them here to the very heart of the Money Pit, a place steeped in legend, mystery, and whispered secrets. What started as another ordinary day in the relentless pursuit of Oak Island's treasure soon twisted into something no one could have predicted. At exactly 9:47 a.m., without warning, a sudden tremor rippled beneath their feet. It wasn't a rumble large enough to register on distant seismic stations, but it was enough to shake helmets, make chains rattle, and send drills grinding to a halt. The Earth seemed to push back, resisting their intrusion with an almost sentient force. The heavy equipment stuttered and stalled, not from wear or malfunction, but as if an unseen hand was holding them back from piercing deeper into the Earth's secrets. Rick Lagina's voice cut through the tense silence. Pause everything. Let's not force this. On the surface, workers exchanged uneasy glances. There was something unnatural in the air. As the machines fell silent, a strange phenomenon caught everyone's attention. The copper dowsing rods, brought on a whim by a local mystic hoping to lend some insight, began to twitch and then violently spin, completing full 360-degree rotations. It wasn't the first time the rods had moved during digs, but this was different. Wild, unrelenting, like they were desperately signaling a warning. Beneath their feet, a faint, almost imperceptible sound pulsed rhythmically through the bedrock. At first, it was a low vibration, like the heartbeat of the island itself. The audio technicians captured the hum and slowed it down in the lab later that evening. What emerged from the static was chilling, subtle chanting, human voices, singing in a cadence both hypnotic and ancient, barely audible but undeniably present. Marty Lagina sat frozen in front of the monitors, eyes wide. He whispered, barely audible, "This isn't natural." Hours passed, and then something unprecedented happened. The water level in the Money Pit began to drop. No pumps had been activated. No storms had rolled in to shift the tides. The water, which had dogged explorers for centuries, flooding shafts, swallowing equipment, and swallowing hope, began to recede, silently, on its own. The crew stared in disbelief. For over 200 years, the Money Pit had been a watery grave, but now it seemed to be revealing its secrets willingly. The following day, sonar scans revealed an impossible void beneath the pit, at a depth of 160 feet. A perfectly circular chamber, smooth and intact, completely absent from any prior scans or maps. It was as though it had been hidden in plain sight, only now revealing itself to those persistent enough to awaken it. The team cautiously lowered a snake cam into the abyss. The small camera descended into the darkness, flickering in and out as it struggled to focus. Then, in the eerie glow of the lights, the lens caught something that made every heart stop. A flash of gold, gleaming from deep within the chamber walls. It was not a mineral vein or a natural formation, but something crafted, an artifact forged by human hands. Gary Drayton, the team's metal detection expert, was the first to react. His detector's readings shot to levels never seen before in Oak Island's modern digs, surpassing even the legendary 1795 discovery. "This isn't coins or simple relics," Gary said with disbelief. "We're looking at something much bigger." Back in the war room, Rick pored over old French naval maps dating back to 1710. Documents once dismissed as irrelevant. One map caught his eye. A cross symbol was marked precisely where the new void had appeared. An ominous sign, perhaps, or a forgotten clue. Rick's mind raced back to an ancient phrase from the Templar texts studied by historian Zena Halpin, "Where the island drinks, the chalice sleeps." A riddle whispered across centuries, now making terrifying sense. The island, it seemed, had a secret cup, and it was lying dormant beneath their feet. Excavation resumed with renewed urgency, but tempered with caution. Every shovel of earth, every creak of wood was measured and recorded. The team's pulse quickened as they unearthed a massive stone slab, 20 feet of cold, heavy rock covered in intricate engravings that told a story older than the island itself. The slab was covered in unmistakable Templar crosses, interwoven with celestial symbols marking the sun and moon's alignment. A calendar of sorts, etched with precision that defied explanation. Doug Crowell ran portable gas analyzers across its surface, detecting subtle traces of radon gas. This suggested that the chamber beneath was airtight, preserved through centuries with secrets locked away from air and light. But it wasn't the carvings or the gas that stunned the team most. It was the stone itself. The slab was composed of Jerusalem limestone, a geological impossibility in Nova Scotia. Samples confirmed that it had to have been quarried thousands of miles away, transported across oceans, and buried deliberately beneath Oak Island. Beneath the slab lay black oak beams, soaked in resin and perfectly preserved. Carbon dating placed them before the 1200s, a match for Templar shipbuilding methods recorded in long-forgotten Vatican archives. Even more eerie was the slab's weight. Equipment logs recorded exactly 666 stone, a number steeped in myth, symbolism, and conspiracy. Nobody voiced the unspoken thought aloud, but everyone felt it hanging in the damp air like a specter. Someone, or something, had placed this here with purpose. And somewhere, someone had gone to terrifying lengths to keep it hidden. The atmosphere was thick with a strange energy. As the floodlights illuminated the slab's carvings, the faint subsonic chant returned, weaving into the night like an ancient spell. The island itself seemed to hold its breath. The search was no longer just for treasure, it was for truth. And now, that truth was ready to be revealed. Slowly, with a grinding groan that echoed through the silence, the slab was lifted, revealing the mouth of a chamber untouched by time, a subterranean vault carved with impossible precision. The air that poured out was ice-cold and dry, as if sealed away for centuries. What they saw next halted every breath in the room. Beneath the stone barrier was a room no one could have imagined. A perfect circle, cut with a precision no ancient tool should have allowed. Its floor was smooth, polished limestone. Embedded into the floor were 7 massive iron rings, arranged symmetrically like points on a compass. They weren't bolted, they weren't fused. They were part of the stone itself, forged into the foundation as if by magic or technology lost to time. Each ring was carved with strange, ancient markings. Rick knelt, brushing away the dust. The outer ring bore Phoenician symbols, flowing, elegant. The second carried jagged runes, cracked and weathered. The third, even older, held characters no one could immediately recognize. Marty called over Dr. Spooner and the archaeologist from Halifax. Under magnification, the deeper rings revealed a hybrid language, a blend of pre-Christian symbology, Templar glyphs, and something alien. At the center of the room stood a hollow marble pillar, waist-high, its interior exposed through a broken side. Resting inside was a perfect metallic sphere, no seams, no markings, just an impossibly smooth object that floated gently above the base. Not rolling, not sitting, floating. When Rick reached toward it, the sphere rose half an inch, responding as if sensing human proximity. Static electricity crackled across the room. Flashlights flickered. The moment his hand drew back, it settled again, motionless and inert. The team rushed tests. The shadow lines curved and intersected until one formation stood out. A compass rose, pointing directly towards Smith's Cove. No one said a word. They didn't have to. The chamber had given them a direction. Whatever lay buried beyond Oak Island's eastern shoreline, the rings wanted them to find it. As the crew documented the discovery, Jack Begley noticed a narrow crack near the base of one ring. Beneath a loose slab, tucked behind a thin-walled cavity, they found a sealed clay jar, ancient, unmarked, and sealed with hardened beeswax. It had survived the ages untouched, protected, hidden in the bones of the machine. The lid cracked with a hollow pop. The smell that followed was sharp, old metal, dust, and dried blood. Inside the jar, 4 tightly rolled scrolls, each wrapped in linen, fragile but intact. They unrolled the first carefully under low light and magnification. The ink was red, thick, and flecked with something metallic. When analyzed, the results defied belief. The writing was composed of human blood, bonded with gold flake. The scrolls told a story no historian could have imagined. A voyage, taken from Jerusalem during the Roman siege, carrying not relics, not gold, but what the text called a fragment of the covenant. Not the ark itself, but a piece of it, a living shard. The scrolls named 12 knights, unrecorded in public history, sworn to protect the fragment, to carry it across the ends of the world, where water met sky and the stars burned differently. Their pact was sealed not in faith, but in blood. Each knight was bound to a command: guard the seal, speak no name, trust no king. The third scroll recounted a second voyage, after betrayal within their ranks. One knight, unnamed, broke the circle. The ship turned north. The fragment was reburied. The seal was reforged. The final scroll was brief, its symbols sloppier, almost frantic. It ended with a single warning: and should the final seal break, sea and sky will trade places. Dr. Spooner carefully examined the scrolls and gasped quietly. The linen wrappings matched Ptolemaic-era mummification techniques, a fusion of Egyptian burial with Greco-Roman ritual. Whoever buried these scrolls was blending faiths, languages, and cultures in one sacred act. The team sat in silence for nearly an hour. It was no longer just about treasure. It never was. They had unearthed a record of a forgotten order and a warning etched in blood and gold. But the island wasn't done. At the eastern edge of the ring chamber, beneath centuries of packed stone, another anomaly was detected. A secondary chamber, smaller, colder, and sealed with what appeared to be a marble door. It took nearly a full day to breach. Inside, buried to the waist in sediment, stood a statue, 8 feet tall, made of gold or a gold-silver alloy, tarnished but gleaming under the lights. The figure stood hunched, head bowed, hands extended, as if pleading or offering. Its form was human, too human. The face resembled depictions of Christ, the elongated jaw, sorrowful gaze, flowing hair. But one detail shattered any sense of reverence. The right eye socket was hollow, blackened, scarred. At its base was a carved inscription, etched in Latin, Salvator Fractura, the Savior, broken. It stood atop a marble pedestal, itself etched with 7 concentric circles, identical in alignment to the iron rings above, a deliberate mirror. Behind the statue, tucked into a sealed copper urn, were items that should never have shared space. Roman coins, minted under Vespasian, Egyptian scarabs, worn and faded, fragments of Byzantine amulets, and something even older, a sliver of obsidian shaped like a serpent's eye. Rick approached the figure with reverence, but also hesitation. As the team prepared to document and possibly move it, seismic monitors began to spike. The ground beneath the statue pulsed, a deep harmonic resonance. The frequency? 432 Hz, the exact pitch used in ancient temple music, and the tuning once believed to mirror the frequency of the earth itself. The statue was more than art. It was a signal, and now something was listening. The response was immediate. The statue groaned as it shifted, stone scraping against stone. Beneath its pedestal, the team discovered a trapdoor, not of wood or stone, but brushed brass, dulled by age and oxidation. Centered on its surface was a circular mechanical puzzle, a lattice of interlocked dials, each etched with symbols, crosses, spirals, geometric glyphs, and unfamiliar sigils. The outer rim bore Latin numerals, while the inner rings spun with a satisfying resistance, clicking into place like the gears of a celestial clock. Jack Begley pointed out the Fibonacci spiral etched into one corner. It wasn't decorative, it was a key. Doug Crowell pulled out a reference from the Templar cipher they'd previously decoded, matching the sequence of numbers hidden within. The rings began to align, revealing a pattern that could only be solved by someone familiar with sacred geometry and encoded faith. Marty's hands trembled as he made the final rotation. With a heavy metallic clunk, the puzzle released. The brass door creaked open with a pressure-driven hiss. A metallic staircase, coiled in a slow spiral, descended into utter blackness. They aimed their lights downward. What they saw sent chills through the team. The walls were lined with heat-resistant ceramic tiles, many fractured but still vibrant. The tiles bore early Arabic script, interwoven with ancient Hebrew, both referencing divine protection, sacred guardianship, and the breath of divine flame. This wasn't a tomb. This was something else. Something protected from heat, time, and perhaps humanity itself. The air grew hotter as they descended. Not unpleasantly so, just thick, charged, like a room waiting to breathe. At the bottom, the staircase ended in a narrow corridor, walls of dark stone. The rings began to align, revealing a pattern that could only be solved by someone familiar with sacred geometry and encoded faith. Marty's hands trembled as he made the final rotation. With a heavy metallic clunk, the puzzle released. The brass door creaked open with a pressure-driven hiss. A metallic staircase, coiled in a slow spiral, descended into utter blackness. They aimed their lights downward. What they saw sent chills through the team. The walls were lined with heat-resistant ceramic tiles, many fractured but still vibrant. The tiles bore early Arabic script, interwoven with ancient Hebrew, both referencing divine protection, sacred guardianship, and the breath of divine flame. This wasn't a tomb. This was something else. Something protected from heat, time, and perhaps humanity itself. The air grew hotter as they descended. Not unpleasantly so, just thick, charged, like a room waiting to breathe. At the bottom, the staircase ended in a narrow corridor, walls of dark stone, smooth and reflective. At the end stood a vault door, oval-shaped, utterly seamless. No hinges, no handles, but something was embedded at chest height. 5 oval indentations, smooth and fingerprint-sized. Rick raised a flashlight, scanning for inscriptions, but there were none. Just those shallow hollows, glowing faintly under UV. Marty reached forward instinctively. His hand hovered over one of the indentations. No contact, just proximity. A moment passed, then another. A low hum began to vibrate through the vault wall. Then, a hiss, a mechanical exhale. The door split at the center, and cold mist hissed outward like a dragon exhaling centuries of silence. Inside, the air was different, drier, sharper. They entered cautiously. In the center of the room lay a wooden panel, cradled in a stone cradle, like a newborn relic. The wood was ancient, golden brown, and veined with gold leaf. Embedded in the panel were shards of sapphire, forming intricate channels, and at its heart, a single, perfectly cut obsidian lens. It pulsed with a dull, steady glow. Dr. Spooner stepped forward with a tremor in his voice. That's cedar. Lebanese cedar tests would later confirm it. The grain matched, and radiocarbon dating placed it at nearly 3,000 years old. This panel wasn't just ancient, it was biblical. More stunning was what lay beside it, a golden tablet, engraved with a phrase in both Latin and Proto-Hebrew. Translated, it read, "What was once whole, now rests in 2 lands. East and west shall guard the breath of God." They stared, silent. This panel, this fragment, was once part of the Ark of the Covenant. The implications hit like thunder. The Ark hadn't disappeared. It had split, hidden in halves, divided between Ethiopia and an impossibly Nova Scotia. The scrolls hadn't lied. The voyage from Jerusalem was real. The Knights were real. And the Covenant still lived. A debate erupted among the crew. Should they go further? Should they reseal the vault? Marty argued caution. Rick, reverence. The air felt charged with warning, as if something ancient watched through the obsidian lens. But the chamber hadn't given up its last secret. Behind the relic panel stood another wall, carved limestone, sealed tight. Sensors confirmed a shallow cavity. They breached it with careful drills. Inside were 3 skeletons, perfectly preserved. Each lay in repose, arms crossed over the chest, wearing the corroded remnants of Templar armor. Helmets, chest plates, chainmail still intact, though worn by time. Across each chest rested a sword, now shattered at the blade's center, as if broken deliberately, not in battle, but in ritual. Their skulls bore no damage, but their eye sockets were filled with salt. Dr. Spooner explained softly. In medieval times, salt was placed over the eyes of martyrs, those who had seen something holy and were thought to carry divine vision into the afterlife. These men had seen something and were silenced by ritual. Etched into the femurs of one skeleton were strange symbols. Comparison with Templar records revealed a near match, not just in glyphs, but in identity. One name, Guillaume de Martel, last seen in Bordeaux, 1325, declared missing at sea. His bones now rested beneath Oak Island, 4,000 miles from where history ended his trail. Clutched in the hands of the second knight was a book, no larger than a Bible. But unlike anything else, the cover was not leather or wood, but pounded silver, engraved with 7 circles and bound with wire. It bore no opening seam, no hinge, no lock. It was sealed shut, as if the words within were not meant to be read, but entombed. On the back wall just behind the skeletons, a single phrase was carved into the stone in ancient French. To wake the relic is to blind the earth. The team froze. It was no longer about history. This had passed into the realm of consequence. They weren't just uncovering artifacts, they were disrupting a pact written in flame, blood, and time. Silence hung heavy for a moment, every breath caught between fear and curiosity. Then Rick's fingers barely grazed the silver book when the temperature in the chamber shifted. It wasn't just cold, it was emptied, as though the air itself had been sucked into another dimension. The metal around them began to groan, subtle but unmistakable, like a submarine under pressure. Then it happened. Above them, embedded somewhere deep in the stone architecture, a seal cracked, a sound too large for the space they were in. It echoed like a cathedral collapsing. Instantly, a violent gust of wind surged upward through the shaft behind them, forming a spiraling wind tunnel that roared to life with unnatural force. The crew scattered. Lights blew out. 2 drones, hovering near the vault entrance, were ripped from the air and shredded against the walls. Communications failed in unison. Radios, phones, sensors, all dead. The metallic hum that had been so consistent since the vault opened went silent, as if something vast and ancient had stirred from slumber. Miles away, seismographs in Halifax registered a 3.2 magnitude microquake, but the epicenter wasn't tectonic. It was localized entirely on Oak Island, with no aftershocks. Emergency services were notified. But by the time they tried to respond, the island was gone from radar. Back at the surface, the once motionless golden statue, Salvator Fractura, had shifted. It now stood at a 3-degree angle, head tilted slightly further to the left. No one had touched it. No tremor had shaken the pedestal. And yet, it had rotated, as if realigning with something beneath or beyond. Then came the sea. For 14 minutes, the ocean around Oak Island began to emit a faint blue, phosphorescent glow, not from bioluminescence, but from something within the current itself, a kind of slow, rhythmic pulse that mimicked breathing. Water temperature rose by 3 degrees Celsius. Fish abandoned the perimeter. Birds went silent. The last drone to escape before shutdown captured something else. Audio, faint, fractured, layered over static. A whisper, but not in English. Dr. Spooner's son, a linguist, ran it through a phonetic analyzer. It matched ancient Aramaic. Translated, the phrase was simple: "The mouth has opened." And that's when everything went quiet. For 24 hours, the crew was stranded. No access to the outside world, no working electronics, and the sky above seemed to refract light oddly, like the air had become prismed glass. At dawn, the quiet ended with the sharp percussion of rotor blades, military helicopters. 6 of them descended without clearance or announcement, followed by 2 unmarked utility vehicles that emerged from a transport barge moored a mile off the coast. Within hours, Oak Island was declared a restricted zone under national security protocol. Publicly, they claimed it was a toxic gas leak from uncovered mining operations. The government coordinated media blackouts. Press access was denied. Locals were told it was nothing, just another Oak Island dig gone wrong. But many saw something else. Men in black suits, unmarked, not military, not police, moved with precision and silence, removing several large crates from the war room and the vault chamber. The crates were heavily insulated, sealed in vacuum packs, and tagged with coded labels. No one spoke of what was inside. Simultaneously, satellite feeds covering Nova Scotia were scrambled. For 48 hours, Oak Island was removed from Google Earth, replaced by a blurry render and data unavailable tag. Amateur trackers noticed that the GPS signal from the team's backup gear went dead at 4:11 a.m., never to return. Marty and Rick were separated and flown out individually. Each was taken to an undisclosed location for a debriefing. Upon release, they were handed a non-disclosure agreement, signed under federal seal. Neither has spoken publicly since. But a month later, a USB drive arrived anonymously at the office of Dr. Emil Hartz, a European archaeologist who had previously worked on Knights Templar artifacts. No return address, no note, just the drive. Inside was partial footage, shaky, raw, time-stamped to the vault breach. In it, Salvatore Fractura is clearly visible. The statue's hollow eye socket, once inert, now glows with a deep red hue, not reflective, not reactive to light, but lit from within, as though something had ignited behind its gaze. That was the last frame. Then came the rumors. Tides around Mahone Bay began acting erratically, no longer syncing with the lunar calendar. Fishermen reported strange undercurrents, pulling boats subtly off course. Electronics around the perimeter of Oak Island began glitching, and divers reported headaches, even hallucinations. One diver, contracted to scan the ocean floor outside the dig perimeter, returned white-faced. He claimed to have seen a cathedral beneath the waves, immense, domed, with columns rising from the seafloor like ancient Greek ruins, except they pulsed. He refused to dive again. Another claim surfaced soon after. A second statue, larger, deeper. A clue hidden within an encrypted section of the Blood Scroll's chest, decrypted by an independent researcher using a Kabbalistic numeric overlay. The coordinates pointed southeast of Oak Island, into territory yet uncharted. But the team was gone. The excavation halted, access denied, silence enforced. All that remained were whispers, fractured images, and an island that no longer followed the rules of Earth. Rick was recorded once in private, months later. In the voice memo leaked by a cousin, he said, "We didn't find treasure. We found something buried for a reason." And on the last remaining drone footage, stitched together from the returning units, the final shot shows Oak Island from above. The trees sway gently. The sea glistens blue. All appears normal, until you zoom in. The ground itself pulses just faintly, like the inhale and exhale of something vast. The island is breathing.